Hello, everybody. My name is Amanda Costco, and I'm the CMO and co-founder of Halt AI. Halt AI provides the most detailed analytics for brand managers and marketing teams so they can get a complete look at how their brand is represented across advertising and social media. We started Halt because we realized that outside of hiring, brands really don't have any insight into how they're doing in terms of diversity representation. So that's why we created our diversity analytics dashboard. It's a best in class dashboard that provides insight into how a brand is representing age, race, gender, skin tone, body type, and disability. So now how do we do this? We actually do this through a machine learning algorithm, which we've trained to recognize different aspects of visual content, whether that's static photos or video content. And we categorize this data into specific buckets. We then have the results analyzed by humans and they're added to our database. We've categorized entire industries, including fashion and beauty, which enable our clients to understand how they score from a diversity standpoint as well as how they compare to their competitors and other industries. So let's jump into the demo. So welcome to Halt's Diversity Analytics Dashboard. For today's session, I'm going to be talking you through how we partnered with Kantar to provide insight into the food sector as well as the retail sector. So through working with Kantar, we analyzed 5,548 ads in food and 3,390 ads in retail. So if I go ahead in here and I put in industry food overall, and I click on enter, this gives me a snapshot of the food industry as a whole. So at first blush, we can see that the food industry is fairly white, even though there is some representation of other races. I can see that it's fairly in that 18 to 44 age range, so not a lot of representation of those over 65. There is gender diversity, not a ton of representation of plus size bodies, and it's mostly white skin and nobody with visible disabilities. So on the left here, we have the overall score, which is out of 10. And we can see that overall as an industry, the food industry performs at about a 3.5. I can do the same thing for retail, and we see that the results are fairly similar. So retail performs at a 3.4. There's a little bit more diversity in some areas, but it looks very similar to the food industry. Now, this summary can be useful for looking at an entire industry, but it can also be useful when you're looking at a per brand view. So if I eliminate the word overview there, as I did, I'm now looking at the different retailers ranked from most diverse to least diverse, and I can see the different diversity dimensions for each category. So I can see, for example, Tesco scores a 3.5. I can see the racial breakdown as well as the age breakdown. I see that they have gender diversity. They're diverse in their sizes that they represent, although they show mostly light skin and no visible disability. So this provides us with a great summary, but sometimes we want to see details, which is why we created our detail button here. So if I go ahead and click this, we can actually get a breakdown of each of the different diversity dimensions and how each brand scores on those dimensions. So, for example, if I look at rituals, in terms of racial diversity, I can see that they've scored a 2 because they've represented two of the racial categories here. 50% of the people in their ads were white, 50% of them were Black, but there's no representation of the other categories. I can see here that they've scored fairly well when it comes to age diversity. They have 3 of the 5 diversity categories, but no representation of those under 17 and no representation of those over 65. I can see that they skew towards a female audience and that 100% of their ads actually showed sizes extra small and small as opposed to medium size or large, extra large. In terms of skin tone, they have representation more of the lighter to medium skin tones and not a lot of representation of very dark skin tones, although they do have some dark skin tones. And again, no visible disability. So this is useful when you really want to drill down into the details of your brand and compare it to its peers as well as compare it to an industry. Now, another feature I wanted to highlight for you is this map feature here. And I'm actually going to show you this for the food industry. And what this allows us to do is this allows us to map out two different diversity dimensions on different axes so that we can see how different brands kind of fall on the map. So on the lower axis here, we have skin diversity, and the brands that are more towards the left have less diversity, and the ones that are towards the right have more diversity. On the left axis, we have racial diversity. The brands that are towards the bottom are less diverse, whereas the brands that are towards the top are more diverse. So we can see that brands like Blendina perform fairly well in terms of both racial and skin diversity, but brands such as Mars Chocolat and supplements distribution have more skin tone diversity than they do racial diversity. And brands like PepsiCo have more racial diversity than skin tone diversity. So this is an interesting way of visualizing the data, and you can actually do this for any industry, for any brands, and for any of the diversity dimensions that we have available. So now these results are based on full diversity, which means equal representation of each group in each category. But an interesting feature that we have on our diversity analytics dashboard is this population tab here. So you can actually compare the data to the population that it's serving. So in our case, I'm going to go ahead and click on population. And in our case, the data is being compared to those in France because that's where the ads were served. And when I go to detail, that's where this gets really interesting. So, for example, for a brand like Intermarché, when it comes to body diversity, I can see that they are overrepresenting size extra small and small by 20%. They're overrepresenting size medium by 40%, but they're actually underrepresenting those with larger and extra large bodies. And so this is where the detailed view together with the population view can become very insightful. Another interesting feature of the diversity dashboard is the compare mode. And so I want to show you what this looks like for example, an industry like food, which I'll pull up here. I'm going to click on ads. And if I go to compare, I'm able to see how these brands rank against one another in the industry. So for example, JDE overall is in the 89th percentile compared to its peers. And when we look at how that breaks down on each category, we can see where there's room for possible improvement. So, for example, in terms of race, they're in the 100th percentile compared to their peers. In terms of age, they're in the 83rd percentile. In terms of gender, 100th percentile, but in terms of body size, they're in the 34th percentile. So, this compare mode is really great for anybody who wants to benchmark an industry or see how they stand in comparison to their peers. I also wanted to highlight that we have a section specifically for looking at Instagram because we know that this is an important part of visual communication these days. So if I go ahead and click on this Instagram tab here, and I'm going to go ahead and pull up the fashion industry. And we can see how brands rank in terms of diversity on Instagram. Again, dimension by dimension, ranked from the most diverse to the least diverse. So this can be really interesting if you're looking to up the diversity of your Instagram content. So, in conclusion, I'd like to offer that Halt AI is a great quantitative tool to be used in collaboration with Kantar's more qualitative and strategic insights, and that diversity needs to be measured in order for it to be improved. If you're interested in a demo or would like to learn more, I invite you to visit halt.ai, or you can reach out to me directly. I'm Amanda at halt.ai. Thanks so much for your time.